It's the MyBroadband Conference 2021. It's the virtual version, and it's a great pleasure to welcome a man who's no stranger to the conference. He's spoken many times at the conference, a man who's incredibly passionate about IoT, and he heads up the organization called SqwidNet, Managing Director of SqwidNet, Phathizwe Malinga. Phathizwe, how are you? It's good to see you again.
Thank you very much. I'm fine. And how are you, Aki? Good to see you.
Yes, I'm doing good, thank you. I mean, we chatted last year this time and we all thought that this would all be over, but clearly it's not over. We're still doing things virtually, but are you willing to take a bet that next year this time things will be back to normal?
I learned from last year, Aki, take no more bets in the COVID period. We are adapting.
Yeah. No, it's incredible, and I think that technology's been quite amazing when you look at the adaptability that you're talking about and the business continuity. How's it going with SqwidNet? I mean, IoT is just growing in leaps and bounds. Lockdown has ended. Are people realizing that they need to take a more aggressive IoT approach? How have things been after lockdown?
When we went into lockdown, we were very worried. I think every South African business was terrified. We didn't know what was in store, and we saw the world do something we've never ever done or seen done in our history. But business has been good afterwards. I think people are not just only understanding IoT, but it's become very practical because we're all working from home. We're worried about assets that are not near us, and it's made the job a little bit easier for us to sell IoT.
Hmm. You know, I was just talking to somebody the other day, not a massive company, because people think, you know, IoT, you need to have a lot of money to deploy it, but this guy was in the flower business, and he's not a massive player. I mean, he does flowers, but he needed to monitor the temperature of his cold rooms, and he installed the IoT systems and the different sensors, and now he can, you know, do this now remotely, and any kind of changes with, you know, load shedding and that sort of thing, which has been a big issue for many businesses. I mean, those are the small kind of usage examples. Last time we spoke about the A, B, C, and D of IoT, and you described IoT to us in a very clear way for our audience, just so that we can understand what IoT is all about and who the market is for in IoT. The Internet of Things, has that changed? Is it still called the Internet of Things? Or in my case, the Idiot of Things?
Never, Aki. No, definitely. I mean, IoT is still strong. It's still the Internet of Things. You know, when I described the ABCD, I was really talking about how these technologies have just come and to help us get visibility of our remote assets. And I think that's what it's really about, Aki. It's about giving better visibility on assets that are very dear to us, that have a direct impact to our quality of life, but aren't quite close to us. And in our country, one of the biggest drivers is, in fact, all over the world, I think, is always, you know, necessity is a mother of invention. And in our country, one of our big society problems is crime. And so when crime starts occurring, that's when you want IoT to shine. And that's what we find, you know, the people that are doing a great job protecting us or our vehicles or our cash in transit, or the people that are trying to move the cash in transit, that's when IoT shines, because it's able to give a bat signal almost, an SOS that goes out to the people who've got the means to come out and protect us and ensure that no harm comes to us.
That's amazing. I mean, you talk about crime. I mean, what kind of uptake are you seeing with IoT? Is it growing exponentially? And I'm talking about South Africa as well as globally. Do we have any kind of idea how many IoT devices are connected and what are the projections going forward?
Yeah, when we started the journey, we were looking at about 17 million devices just in South Africa alone.
Okay.
And this exponential journey that we all believe we're on this year, which is 2 years from that 2018, let's say, prediction, would put us on 25 million right now, and 25 million IoT devices in South Africa alone. And that number is projected to grow in South Africa to 106 million IoT devices. And we kind of know and understand that we are probably horribly wrong. So it's at least 106 million IoT devices.
That is astonishing. Now, I mean, just take us back to SqwidNet. I mean,
Yeah.
what has this market been doing all along, and why is it important to think of SqwidNet? What is your differentiator when it comes to the IoT market?
Right. When the market, and the main market I think that I'd like to talk about is the security market, because they're very near and dear to us. We've got the alarm systems in our houses, and if there's an intruder, we get this message that goes out to this company that comes in. So first and foremost, what these companies have been focused on is making sure that if anything happens to our vehicles or to our houses, they're able to respond. But over the years, the technology that they've used, they've owned themselves. They've owned the ability to listen to our houses and then to react to our houses. But that technology has been running for over 20 years, Aki. And so it's getting to that point where it's becoming very costly for them to keep that network up without passing that cost on to us. We're changing houses all the time. We want more things protected. We want ourselves protected. And so they are starting to look at innovative technologies or technologies that are taking advantage of this exponential curve that comes with IoT. And that's kind of where we plug in. And I think, Aki, the big differentiator for SqwidNet is not only are we a very complementary network, we can attach very well to something that you already have. I like to use the word retrofit. So that means you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You just give the baby a diaper change. But another big thing for us is we're national. We are in over 90% of South Africa. I think the last check that I had was just shy of 94%, which means if a car gets stolen anywhere in South Africa before it leaves our shores into the neighboring countries, we are able to get a distress signal out and get an exact location of where that vehicle is. And similarly, when it comes to our houses as well, in the period of load shedding, you want to be sure that these companies can hear you. And that's kind of what we do. We guarantee that if they use us, they'll be able to hear you.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, just to touch on your actual network, how is it? Are you on? Have you got your own network? How do you get it? Because you explained it to me last time that you guys are using a different kind of frequency to enable you to do this low data transmission, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So for any wireless technology to speak, it uses radio frequencies. We've seen ICASA go in and out of court, also freeing spectrum up, trying to do the best in terms of the country. That spectrum is really just how these many devices choose to speak at a specific frequency. The frequency that we speak at is called an unlicensed spectrum. So we are governed by ICASA. ICASA ensures that we play by the rules, but they don't charge us a license for us to play in that space. It is reserved for very low chatter industry, scientific and medical usage, of which we fall into that category. And what we're able to do is pass that cost on or pass on the not cost to our service providers, who are then able to hop off their networks, get onto our network without costing you, without passing that buck on to you.
So this whole spectrum debate is not something that's going to, causing delay in your expansion, right? I mean, there's no issues with you and spectrum. You've got more than enough to use at the moment. Absolutely.
We in an unlicensed band, you just have a lot of rules of how chatty you can be. And the technology that we use, that we've deployed, which is SIGFOX, governs and ensures that we're never more chatty than the regulation comes about. I always say we're like brown bread. I think I told you that story, Aki, the last time, in a bakery where there's all the fancy protocols that you can have, 5G and 4G. We're the staple. We're the brown bread. When you need a good P&J sandwich, we're there for you.
P and J say, stop it, you're making me hungry now. But I mean, I love what you said earlier that you kind of retrofit, and I think the security industry is just such a great example that you used, because when you look at it in the past, a lot of it was very analog, and that was labor intensive to set things up. Now you can just retrofit things and really take away quite a bit of the cost away, and also give you even more flexibility to deliver the services that you want to deliver to. But now, when you look at IoT, and in South Africa, we've spoken a lot about business, but is IoT for business alone?
I think it's really for us. And what IoT is, it's an improvement in how we get services from our service providers. First and foremost, I think it's about offering us a better customer experience. Much more reliable, much more visible, much more dependable. If our alarm is going off, we know that somebody can respond to it. But the cost and the way that it works, and it kind of is for business, but for business to give better service to us. So we see a lot of the people who are traditional players in this space, the Fidelity ADTs, the Discovery Insures, the Netstars of the world, people that we trust with our lives even, are the people that will bring IoT. But it does start to extend and start giving us an ability to have visibility on other stuff that we care about, that we don't really need a big company. And we start to see plug and play, I call them drop and play devices. You can now just drop a sensor into your pool. You don't need a big company to help you with that. And that sensor will start telling you what the chlorine levels are in the pool, make sure that the pool is safe for your kids to use. And you can buy that at Builders Warehouse quite easily. So I think it's mainly a business play, but it's a business play for us.
Okay. And I guess, so how does that benefit our audience as consumers, for example?
One of my best examples is water. Water metering it encapsulates everything that I believe IoT kind of represents. The other story I do like telling you, of course, is manhole covers. But in the water metering space, we all experience this bill shock if the water metering is gathered once a month by somebody, or once every 3 months. They look at your trends, they estimate. And what's worse is if you're in an estate and the estate is using a bulk water meter, you're kind of guessing what everybody is using from a water point of view. And that can be frustrating when you believe you're a water warrior. You're a green individual. You recycle, you're trying to do all of this good stuff, but it doesn't show in your bill. What you can do, and that's what I love about this retrofit, is without replacing your water meter, you can get your service provider to just make that water meter smarter. That service provider could be the city of Joburg, or it could be a third party. We're trying to create jobs in this time of COVID. We've got a crew called Digital Plumber. They come out there just as much as your geyser's burst, they replace your geyser. They can smarten up your meter. And what I've experienced since I've done it in my home is I think in this year alone, I've had 3 leaks in different toilets that I didn't know were leaking because it wasn't apparent to my eye. Because it's kind of, these, especially a toilet, it leaks in a very odd way where by the time you see it, it's gone. It's too much. And not just me, I think the testimonials from everyone who's done this is you save about 200 Rand a month just by making your water meter smarter. And it'll cost you no more than 3,000 Rand in total. So in a year, you almost make your return back. And if you did have a leak, you're definitely making your return back. So I think that's a good example of how IoT in its practical sense helps us as individual, empowers us, but also helps us by not wasting this scarce resource.
Yeah. Phathizwe, I want to ask you one final question. This is going to be really a booming industry, and I know you've got your whole, department of engineers. How do young businesses or young students who have a great idea for an IoT device, How do they collaborate or come up with an idea and take it from an idea into something practical that would be applicable on the SqwidNet network, for example, as an IoT device?
Yeah.
How does one take an idea and make it big?
I think that's a great question, and I've been thinking about the best word I could use to describe that. And I think my favorite word will be simply. You know, if ever I was to get any message across to a startup, an entrepreneur, somebody who's thinking of doing this, it's simple. That's what IoT brings to you. It's not rocket science, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. And you can, with very, very low capital. I was speaking to some kids out in Witbank, and I told them it only costs you 5,000 Rand and you're in business. It's going to take you a little bit of a while to get going, but you can turn that 5,000 Rand over a couple of times, learn the ins and outs about your market and service them better. So simply, I think, is my main word. The education isn't high. It's matric at best. So you can do this. Even you said the idiot of things. I'm the idiot of things. I can do it. So you can do it. The cost of it is extremely low. We're talking about 5,000 Rand if you're really, you're a kid just getting out of the gates and want to buy his own product. And I think the most important thing for me is if you're an entrepreneur, it's always about the market. It's not really about the product. And what this product allows you to do, it allows you to service a market that is desperate right now and isn't finding anybody to help them. If you have a burst geyser and you are shack number 67, you're not going to call big companies to come and sort you out. You're going to try and do it. But if you are a service provider who has access to that neighborhood, you can now all of a sudden become a service provider. An unchallenged and unserviced market that you can attend to.
That's such encouraging words. Phathizwe Malinga, the Managing Director at SqwidNet, thank you so much. I mean, I'm going to go and look up that kit. Where does one buy a kit like that for 5 grand?
You can give us a call. I think the site is up, Digital Plumber. It teaches you how to become a plumber. You work with the Institute of Plumbers South Africa, and you get out certified with kit already. Or worst case, find me and I'll help you get started.
Awesome.
We've got, like you said, the rocket scientists who are not working on rockets.
I love it. I love it. And there are just so many brilliant applications when it comes to IoT. Just be creative and think about the examples that Phathizwe was talking about. Thank you so much for joining us, Phathizwe Malinga, who is the Managing Director of SqwidNet. We do appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us at the MyBroadband conference.
Thank you, Aki. Thank you, everybody.